might get started. So hi everyone, my name is G Trelaw. I'm one of the hosts for today's event. We'll be talking about what support outside of the NDIS should look like and some of the ideas that have come out of the feature dialogue. So a visual description of me is I'm a 24-year-old masculine presenting person with fair skin. I have short brown hair and I'm wearing a cream colored jumper, and I have black and green headphones on with a microphone. First off, I'd just like to get started by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land on which we gather. For me, that is Kaurna country. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders and ancestors and to any First Nations people who are here with us today, and that it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. If you do feel comfortable, please do put what lands you were joining from today in the comments. We'd love to see where everyone is from. So a bit about me is I'm a young, queer, disabled person based on Kaurna country in Adelaide, and I am so excited to be here with everyone today. And I'll pass over to Maddie, our other co-host.
Hi everyone, my name is Maddie Ruskin. I'm also one of the hosts for today's event. I am a woman in my late 20s with dark blonde hair and fair skin. I'm wearing a mustard yellow jumper and white earphones. So just in case anyone is wondering, we do visual descriptions of ourselves so people who are blind or have low vision can have an idea of what we look like in order to make this more accessible for everyone. To make meetings and events accessible for everyone as much as possible. So today's event has live captioning and Auslan available. So please feel free to turn on multi-pin to ensure you can see the Auslan interpreter even when we share our screens today. For those who have not been to one of our events before, welcome. The Disability Dialogue is a collaborative project between Disability Advocacy Network Australia, Inclusion Australia, Alliance 20, Melbourne Disability Institute. It's funded through an Information Linkages and Capacity Building ILC grant from the Department of Health, Disability and Ageing, DHDA.
Awesome. So now we do just have a little bit of housekeeping to make sure everyone has an idea of how today will go. We really want to create a safe and open and inclusive space for everyone. So first off, AI tools are not allowed. We know they can be useful tool for people with disability, but we also really want to protect everyone's privacy. We'll also be uploading a transcript to the event page shortly after this event is over, and we'll also send a recording to you via email. Secondly, we try really hard to stick to the time to make sure we hear from all of our guests and have time to hear from you, our audience members. This means we might have to interrupt and move things along sometimes. We are not being rude, we promise. We just try to keep us on time. We also encourage you guys to have your cameras on if you are comfortable with that, just so we can help feel like we are sort of in the room together. But it's absolutely up to you, and please do feel free to join however is most comfortable to you. We'd love to see your comments or questions in the chat. We might not have time to get to all of them, but we'll absolutely be doing our best.
If anything in today's discussion brings up any difficult feelings and you would like some support, you can visit disabilitydialogue.com.au/support to find a list of resources available. We've put this link in the chat. You are also more than welcome to take a break from the event at any time. So today's event is being recorded and will be uploaded to the Disability Dialogue website. So please be aware when you are sharing things that other people in the public will be able to see or hear it by watching the recording.
All right, so let's get into it. Today we'll be talking about some of the ideas that have come out of the feature dialogue, which are all about making support outside of the NDIS better. So what is the feature dialogue? The feature dialogue is all about the disability community coming together to come up with ideas for how to address problems or challenges that affect us. For this feature dialogue, we've been looking at two challenges, which are how do we make support for people outside of the NDIS better, and how do we make support for children and families outside of the NDIS better. We've been doing this by talking to lots of different people in the disability community in lots of different ways. In a moment, there'll be a slide on screen which has a picture of the feature dialogue process. So there are 4 stages to the dialogue. The first stage is all about what the big problems are and what we already know about them. It helps us to decide what we should look at next. Stage 2 is all about giving people lots of different ways to share their ideas. We did this through focus groups, open dialogue events, and a survey. From there, we took all of those ideas and we've turned them into 3 big ideas, 3 solutions for how to make support for people outside of the NDIS better.
We're now in stage 3. This stage is where we take those big ideas and share them with people with disability, their families, people who work in disability, and get their feedback. We want to think about which ideas would work best. So we've done this through some small group discussions, and we're doing that here today. Stage 4 is where the dialogue team will write the big final report, which will explain the ideas we've landed on, the final big ideas or big solutions. All the way through this process, there's been a group called the Working Group. This is a group of people with disability and people who work in the disability space who are experts. They've met at the end of each stage and helped to decide where to go next. So I know that's a lot of information to take in. But this is the first time a featured dialogue has ever happened. So it's brand new to everyone.
So as we said, today is all about sharing the big ideas with you so that you can share what you think about the ideas. You can use the chat to share your thoughts and ask questions. But a very important note is after the event, we'll be sending you all a survey. The survey will show you each of the ideas again, and then it will be a chance for you to share your feedback on them.
Okay, so let's talk about what we've learned about making support better for people with disability. Also, just a reminder, you can put your questions in the chat and we will get to as many of them as we can. So some of the biggest things that we've learned through feature dialogue are people say they can't get information in ways that make sense to them. So we need to build a place that gives them good information in a way that makes sense to them, that is different from a government website.
All right, so now we're going to be hearing from our first guest, Kelly Treloar. Kelly is the director of the Disability Dialogue, and she's going to tell us a bit about the groups that have been with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people with disability. Hello, Kelly. Can you please say hello and give us a visual description of yourself?
Thanks, G. Hi, everyone. I'm joining from Ghana country. I'm a feminine presenting person with fair skin. I'm in my early 50s. I have dyed red hair and a fringe, and today I'm wearing a black top and some earrings made from quandong seeds and emu feathers.
Thank you so much, Kelly. So my first question for you is, it was really important for the dialogue to include focus groups with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Have these groups been organised in a different way to other groups? And if so, why?
Absolutely, thank you. So Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people often have really unique experiences of disability, and those experiences are shaped by culture, family, community, and country. And that's as well as the barriers that they face in mainstream systems. So these barriers are sometimes called intersectional discrimination, which is a word you might hear. For Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander disabled people, intersectional discrimination means that their experiences of racism and ableism are compounded, which is a really big word. But what this means in this instance is racism and ableism, they don't just happen side by side, they interact and they intensify each other. So they create experiences that are different from either form of discrimination, so ableism or racism, on their own. So by holding dedicated First Nations focus groups conversations, participants told us that they felt a lot more comfortable sharing openly because they were in a really culturally safe space with other mob who understood those experiences without needing everything explained. What came through from the groups was that these conversations weren't just about disability. They were about family, community, that connection to country, identity, and the challenges of navigating multiple systems that don't always work well together for mob. Those perspectives are really, really important because they may not always come through in bigger group discussions. Creating a space specifically for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voices helped us to really hear those experiences and solutions to foundational supports that would probably get missed in the bigger group.
Thank you so much for that, Kelly. So I'm wondering, what were some of the most interesting things that people shared in those groups?
Thanks, Maddie. There were a number of really strong themes that came through in all of the First Nations specific group conversations. One of the biggest was that disabilities never talked about on its own. So again, Mob spoke about disability alongside the culture, family, country, identity, and community, and I've repeated that a few times because it's super important. Those things are really deeply connected, and participants talked about how you can't separate one from the other. So for many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, culture itself is a source of strength and support. So when we talk about foundational support, culture has to be part of that conversation. Another really strong message was the role that families play. Parents, grandparents, carers, extended families spoke about being the people who hold everything together. They described spending years advocating for their children or family members, whether that was in schools, hospitals, doctors, through the NDIS or other services. Many shared that they often become the coordinator, the navigator, and the advocate because those systems themselves can be difficult to understand or don't always work well together. We also heard a lot about the challenges families experience trying to get a diagnosis or access support. Several participants shared they knew something was different with their child long before anybody listened to them. The First Nations participants in the group spoke about long waiting lists, having to travel long distances, paying privately for assessments, and feeling like they had to keep proving that support was needed. There was a strong feeling that if families could access culturally safe assessments and early support sooner, it would make a really big difference for children and their families. Another really important theme was trust. And participants spoke about Aboriginal community controlled organisations and Aboriginal medical services. They described these as the places where they felt understood, respected, and culturally safe. Many said they'd like to see more disability information, diagnosis, navigation, and support provided through Aboriginal organisations because those services already have trusted relationships with families and communities. We also heard how important it is for people to stay connected to their traditional country and community. Participants don't want to see people having to leave their homes and communities just to receive support. And that is something that actually does often happen. People need to relocate, hundreds of kilometres off of country and away from their families to access support. They spoke about wanting services that come to communities rather than communities having to go to services. Staying connected to family, language, culture, and country was always described as being just as important as accessing those formal disability supports. Another thing that stood out was the value of lived experience. And participant talked about some of the best support they've ever received have come from another parent or another Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander person who had a similar journey to theirs. They wanted more opportunities for families to connect, yarn together, share knowledge, and support each other rather than feeling like they had to navigate everything alone. Excuse me. One of the strongest messages was that participants weren't asking for something completely different. They were asking for systems that work better for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Excuse me for a minute. Sorry, I've just got a bit of a cough, so thank you. So they wanted services that were easier to access, culturally safe, built on relationships, and designed alongside communities and mob with disability. Overall, what really stood out was that foundational supports for mob with disability are about much more than services. They're about relationships, trust, culture, family, and community. The groups really told us that if foundational supports are going to work well, they need to recognise the strengths and build on them, rather than expecting people to fit into systems that were never designed with their experiences in mind.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelly. That was really interesting to hear about. Oh, sorry, Maddie, I think you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kelly. That was fantastic. So now we've heard the background of how these ideas were developed. It's time to show you the very first idea. So we are going to show you a video now, and it does go for 7 minutes, so it is quite long, but I promise it's super interesting. Before we do show the video, I just wanted to remind everyone that after today's event, we will be sending everyone who has registered for today's event a survey, which will give you the chance to tell us what you think about these ideas that we're about to show you. This is an online navigator that could be designed to help people with disabilities and their families find information, make decisions, and connect with others. When we say online navigator, we mean a website or phone app similar to Google that people with disabilities can use in their day-to-day lives. The online navigator has been created because through a consultation process with people with disabilities, we learned 3 things. 1, people told us they find it difficult to know what information sources to trust. 2, they find the systems of government support and private services difficult to understand and use. 3, they also want to connect with others with similar experiences to learn from and support each other. One idea was to use technology developed by people with disabilities for people with disabilities. This technology would be built so that the information it collects remains in control of disability-led organizations. This app will help people 1, find information. 2, navigate complex decisions. 3, connect with other people with disabilities. Now, we are going to show you an example of what this technology could be like. This is just a mock-up for now, but hopefully it gives you an idea of how the real thing could work. It's also screen reader friendly. There would be features built in, like talk to text, to help people who are blind or have low vision navigate the website. Taking us through the app is Paul Riddle, who developed it. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Maddie.
Thank you so much for developing this app. How do you hope technology like this could help people with disabilities?
Well, the aim is this technology could provide really simple, easy to use information for everyday life for people with disabilities.
Amazing. I'm so excited for you to show us some more of the wonderful features that you have put together. Okay, let's look at the tech. We are calling it the Disability Information and Access Navigator, or Diana. I'll give a quick visual description. We are looking at a website that has a white background. On the top left corner, there is a green logo with the words Access Navigator. Across the top, there are buttons for Home, Information, Navigation, Connection, Mobile, Memory, and Accessibility. On the page, there is a green button that says Start Prototype. We will be clicking this to start our demo. At the start, you will be asked a few questions, including what state or territory you live in, and your disability, or the disability of your family member. This is because we want to make sure the information you have is accurate and what you need.
Okay, so let's start the onboarding process by clicking Start. Here we're asked some information about ourselves. Every question is optional. We have our name, our age, where we live, whether we identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, and we can write in our own words about our disability. We can also choose how we would like the Access Navigator to respond to us. And we can choose to save these details. If we do save, we can always come to the memory and make any changes. On our dashboard, we have 3 key areas. Information. This is where we can ask the navigator to provide information about any area of life. We also have navigation. This is where we can ask for a step-by-step guide to processes. We also have connection. This is where we can find groups of peers who are like us. One last thing, if we ever want to, we can always find someone to talk to by clicking here and finding a person we need. A navigator, a navigator, a coordinator, or a mentor.
Okay, so that is the first idea. It's an idea to help people get trusted information. We're going to bring up 2 guests now to answer some questions about this idea. If you have a question, you can pop it in the chat and we'll get to as many of the questions as we can. So the first guest is Paul Riddle. Paul is an infrastructure architect, which means he works with computers. Paul is actually the person who built the app that you just saw in the video. Paul, could you please say hello and do a visual description of yourself?
Hello, I'm Paul. I'm a 50-year-old male with a hat, glasses, and I live with cerebral palsy.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. So our second guest joining us today is Kirsten Dean. Kirsten is the Deputy Director of the Melbourne Disability Institute at the University of Melbourne. And Kirsten has been working with the dialogue team on the feature dialogue. Hi, Kirsten. Could you please say hello and give a visual description of yourself?
Hey G, and hey everybody. So my name is Kirsten Dean. I'm a middle-aged white woman with blonde, curly, completely unmanageable hair. And today I'm wearing a purple dress, a black top, and I wear glasses.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. So my first question is for you, Paul. So is this app a finished product? Is it ready to go?
Uh, at the moment, this is just a test app. We are just trying to show the idea to people and see if they like it.
Kirsten, my question is for you. What do you think are some of the biggest benefits of an app like this could be?
Thanks, G. There were a couple of really, really strong themes that came out of all of the groups and all of the sessions that we ran in the first couple of stages of this feature dialogue. And probably the most important things were that people really have trouble finding the information that they need, but people also have trouble finding information that they trust. And then the third thing is people want the information in the way that's going to work best for them. So the challenge is that that is different for everybody. Some people said that they wanted the information summarized, so they only got the most important bits. And other people said they wanted all of the detail so that they could work out which were the most important bits. So we think that this is where an app or a website like this could be really useful, in that you can ask the app or the website to give you the information in the way that you want it and is going to work for you. It also can be, the information can be broken down into stages, so you don't get this whole tidal wave of information all given to you at once. It can break it down for you, and if you're trying to make a decision, break down the decision into different steps. Probably the most important thing was that if a website like this or an app like this was controlled by the disability community, the information that went into it would have to get the kind of disability tick of approval. And we think that would go a really long way in helping people to trust the information. Because one of the things that people told us really strongly in the groups is that they trust information when it comes from people who they think are just like them, like their peers. But there are going to be some challenges in developing this. How to make it easy to use for everyone, how to make it easy to use when you might have kind of limited internet coverage or you have difficulty with tech. And we know that tech solutions don't work for everyone. So if we're going to take this idea forward, we would need to work with the disability community to think through these issues and then come up with some solutions.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. My next question is for you, Paul. Could this app help people find their way through complicated or tricky processes? That was one of the things people with disabilities said that they need support with.
Yeah, hi Maddie. Yeah, for sure. So the idea behind this would be those tricky processes would be a step-by-step guide, and the guide would deliver to you the way you prefer. So if you like easy step by step 1, 2, 3 guides, that's the way it would happen. For example, you might be applying for a rental and you want to know, give me all the steps, 1 to 10, where do I go? It will guide you through each and every step as you do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. Kirsten, another question for you is who would this app belong to? Who would be in charge of running it and making sure that it works?
Yeah, the short answer to that, G, is what people with disability and families told us in these groups is that they want an app like this or a website like this to be owned and run by people with disability and their families. So the first step would actually be to develop it. And people with disability and their families would need to be involved in how it looked and how it worked. And then once it was developed, you would obviously need some organisations to run it. And then most importantly, and I can even see some comments in the chat along these lines, people with disability and their families would have to be in charge of what we called the verification process, the process of making sure the information that went into it was correct and that it was useful and that it was up to date and kind of current. And so all of those things, both developing up and then running it, are big jobs, and they obviously need resources. So then we'd also need to think about how we were going to fund all of this activity. So they're the next things that we need to think about.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. So now we're going to take some audience questions. And also, I just want to say that the Disability Dialogue team is monitoring the chat and collecting all of your comments and feedback. So thank you. But also a reminder that we will be sharing a survey, which will give you the chance to share lots of feedback on this idea as well.
Awesome. So our first question from the audience is from Mark, and he asked, how would the information and processes be kept up to date? This might be a good question for Kirsten to answer.
Yeah, so that's great question, Mark, and that's the thing that we would need to think through in the next stage. When we talked about it amongst ourselves, we probably imagined that there was a few organisations who would be involved in first developing it and then organising it and running it, and then we would have to have a process where when information came into the app, we would have to test it and make sure that it was right and that it was current. Before it got introduced to the website. So we'd have to develop a process for doing that. But one of the awesome things is that if an app like this kind of got up, we would be as it got a kind of roll on, we'd be collecting information from lots and lots of different people. That is one of the awesome things about it. So it would mean that the process of checking and testing and making sure that it was all okay before it got into the website would be a big job. So that's one of the things we kind of have to think about in the future, is how will we do that? I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that Paul?
Yeah, I mean, we would just be verifying data coming in, making sure it's factually correct, and probably having some kind of multi-layer verification process, so people couldn't submit things that weren't true. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. So Paul, my next question is for you. I have a question from Adam. He asked, could this be accessed by people that are not disabled, but are supporting people that are disabled?
Yeah, for sure. For people with disabilities or people supporting people with disabilities, for sure.
If I could add to that one of the cool things we think about the app is that you could do it side by side with someone. So it wouldn't have to be just done by yourself. You could do it together with someone if you needed some support to kind of work your way through. So we think that's one of the advantages of the website.
Amazing. Thank you both. Rebecca has asked, is this a social connector for people to chat with each other in different areas, or does it only give information? Kirsten, this might be a good one for you again, unless Paul would like to take it.
Yeah, no, that is one of the really cool things that could be added to the app, that it isn't intended just to give people information. On one of the tabs that you might remember from the video, it had make a connection. And it would take a little while to get going because people would have to kind of connect. But one of the things you could ask it to do is that, are there any people in my area, in that kind of area where I live, who are using this app that I could connect with? Now, obviously, you've got to put a lot of kind of safety features kind of around that. But we reckon this is one of the things that it could do. And then in the future, people might have other ideas, and you could add those things to the website or to the app as you went along. But being able to connect with people is one of the things that we think would be really great about the app.
Thank you so much for that, Kirsten. So we have a question here from Maddie, another Maddie. Perhaps this one is for Paul. So is this app using AI? And what safeguards will be in place to prevent hallucinations?
Very good question. We're still trying to work out what the underlying intelligence or data model would look like. But safety would be the number one concern, and we would definitely, if we do utilize AI, there would definitely be multiple steps taken to prevent hallucination or giving false information to people.
I've got another question for you, Paul. This is from Jane. Has compatibility testing been done across screen readers and voice navigation software?
No, not at the moment. But that would be something we would do if we were to go forward, for sure.
Fantastic. I have another question for Paul. Would the app have easy read too?
Yes, actually has easy read now in the app. So I've already built that in.
Another one for Paul is would the information also be available in other languages?
Yes, that could be easily done.
Amazing, thank you. I think all the questions we are going to get through for now, which brings us up to our break time. So thank you everyone so much for this so far. We're going to go on a 5-minute break. The break is only 5 minutes just because we want as much time as we can to take questions from you guys. There will be a little screen that shows up with a countdown clock. So yeah, we'll see everyone back here in 5 minutes.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a nice break and managed to get yourself a cup of tea or a snack. So now we're going to talk about ideas for how to make support for children with disability and their families better. So young people with disability and parents of children with disability shared their thoughts on how to make it work better. Some of the things that they said were, true belonging and inclusion means that every child's needs are met. This lets children be themselves. Children do best when they are doing activities they enjoy, in places they feel comfortable, with people that they love. Parents also said they need more support, including ways to connect with other parents.
So now we are going to hear from Brooke, who is an experienced self-advocate with over 5 years of experience working in the disability sector, currently as a policy officer with Inclusion Australia. Hello there, Brooke. Could you please say hi and give a visual description of yourself?
Hi, my name is Brooke Canahan. I wearing glasses, brownish blondish hair with a grey jumper. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Brooke. So, Brooke, you ran through the groups of people with intellectual disability differently. Can you tell us a bit about why you did this and why it was so important?
So I co-facilitated the targeted foundational supports focus groups in my role as a policy officer with Inclusion Australia. It is important that the focus groups are co-facilitated by someone with an intellectual disability. As someone with an intellectual disability, I have lived experience and understand what the group is going to talk about. These are some of the things we did to help make the group more accessible. We shared the questions before the focus group. The group questions, the questions and other information were in easy read. This helped people prepare for the focus groups. The focus group was 2 hours long. We had a break in the middle so we could get a drink and stretch our legs. 2 hours is a long time to sit in front of a computer answering questions. The breaks are very important to have. We went through the agenda at the start of the focus group. We do this as it helps the group understand what will happen at the focus group, as this can help people feel safe and comfortable. We also shared and spoke about a policy that Inclusion Australia has. It's called the Safe Place Policy. The Safe Space Policy has rules about how to behave at meetings and events run by Inclusion Australia. A safe space policy makes everyone feel safe, happy, and included. I let everyone have a turn at speaking in the focus group. If someone didn't know what to say, I helped with prompts and encouraged them to share their ideas. It is very important to me that I make my group I co-facilitate inclusive, as I believe everyone's voice helps to make change in the system for people with a disability. Also, when someone types something in the chat, we read it out. This helps to make sure everyone knows what is happening and people can share in a way that is comfortable for them.
Thank you so much, Brooke. That was really interesting. I was wondering what was some of the most interesting things that came out of the group discussion?
So the focus group that I co-facilitated was with people with an intellectual disability who were aged 18 to 30 years old. There were people from around Australia in the focus group. It was good that we got to hear from people from around Australia. We reflected on our childhoods and spoke about what we remembered about being a child with a disability. Some of the things we spoke about were friendships, hobbies, and supports. It was hard to think back to our childhood, but some people found it easier than others. It was interesting to listen to everyone's different experiences from when they were younger. Although we were all similar age and have an intellectual disability, lots of us had different experiences. I found it interesting that some people in the focus group attended mainstream schooling and some people didn't. Most of the group remembered getting support, but the support looked different for everyone. Some people got support in the classroom. Some had to get support in a different building at their school. Some people got support outside of school, like at the local hospital. One person shared how the support didn't meet their needs because they are visual and hands-on learner and learn best when they get to see and do the thing they are learning. The support they got didn't help them learn like this, so it was hard for them. It was good to have the opportunity to reflect on our childhoods so that we can help come up with ideas to improve support for children and families in the future. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brooke. That was really, really insightful. So thank you for sharing. We are now going to show you the big idea for how to make support for children with disability and their families better. We're going to show you a video now. It is shorter than the one that we showed you earlier. What we have heard from people with disability and parents of children with disability is that children learn and develop best when they are in places they love, with people they love, and doing things they love. Whether it be in their preschool or primary school classroom, where they know their teacher, where they're surrounded by their friends, or whether it's at home where they're comfortable with their family. So what if support for children with disability, or for children who might have developmental delay, was delivered to children in these places, rather than just in the therapy office? We've come up with an idea for a new way for support for children to be delivered. We're thinking of an idea where hubs for children and families are created. The hub has a preschool. It also has a primary school. It has childcare. It might even have a public library. And there's also the support center. They would all be in the same place. The idea of the hub is that it provides support for children, support for parents or caregivers, social connection, information and navigation to help people find their way through the disability support system. The support center would have things like allied health workers, like speech therapists, occupational therapists, and physiotherapists. It would help coordinate peer support groups between parents and children. There'd be community organisations too, like Commission Australia, Vinnie's, or the local ACCHO, which stands for Aboriginal Community Controlled Health Organisation. And there would also be a coordinator, especially someone that works with each family to coordinate their support. Support for children would be delivered a little differently. Rather than the child always going to the therapist's office, the support would happen in the classroom at preschool or school, the childcare, or the library. For example, the speech therapist goes into the classroom and works with the teacher to come up with activities for the whole class that actually help children to practice their speech therapy activities. Or an occupational therapist might go into the classroom and support the teacher to set up the desk in a way that supports the child to develop. This helps the child to learn new skills in places they love, with the people they love, doing activities they love. It also helps them practice their skills in real-world settings, not just in the therapist's office. What do you think of this idea? Do you think this hub would work? What else would this hub need in order to support children with disability or developmental delays in their families? let's talk about this idea together so you can share your ideas and feedback.
So now we're going to bring back Kirsten and Kelly to speak to us about this next idea, the hub. So Kelly, could you tell us about how you think this hub could support families and children?
Looks Maddie. Yeah, sure. I think there are some really basic principles or really basic ideas about this model that really supports children and their families. The first is the familiarity and access. It's based around where most kids will be going anyway. So whether they are in childcare, kindy or school, or even for kids who are homeschooled to have access to a library or a community space. So these aren't new spaces for families to navigate or try and physically get to. It's a simple one, but it's really, really important. Having a coordinator for each family would really help a lot of people too. We often hear that supports and services can be really difficult to navigate. So having one person who can work with you on that is going to be super helpful. I really like how this could work in a city with a lot of people, or in a smaller regional town, or even stretch out to some remote communities. I've actually been reflecting on my own time as a parent of young children. It was a very long time ago, and both of them are very much excellent adults now. But particularly with my first, I was a teenager in a regional town with no transport. And I just reflect on how much easier it would have been to get supports through a local hub where everybody already was, or accessing all the things that they needed. Then with my second, living in an urban location and having transport, I wasn't too sure where to access what I needed or what the pathways were. So it would have been really helpful in that situation as well. Probably would have made me a better parent looking back. The other thing that this model builds in is community. And we know how important community is for everybody. When everything is happening in one place, families end up crossing paths with each other. A lot of families raising kids, with a disability or not, can feel pretty isolated. So a model that naturally brings people together, not because they were told to go and network and go do something or join a group, but just because they're in the same place doing the same everyday things. I don't think I've ever met a family that wouldn't benefit from that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelly. Kirsten, why do you think that supporting children in places where they already are, like school or kindergarten, might work better than what is happening now?
I think there's probably a couple of things to sort of remember. One is going back to the start of the kind of feature dialogue. We got a bunch of researchers to look at what the research and evidence said about what was best practice, which is a very fancy way of just saying what has been shown to work best for kids and families. And what the evidence said is that you get the best outcomes for kids and for families when they have a chance to learn and practice their skills in the environment, both where they feel comfortable and safe, but also where they're going to actually be using those skills. That they do best when they're learning in everyday environments like school or like kinder or like childcare, or probably most importantly, at home, where they spend the most time with the people who love them the most, kind of too. Like when you think about it, that makes sense, right? It's really hard to learn something new away from the place that you're actually going to use that skill. So it kind of makes sense. And so therefore, it's not surprising that the research and the evidence also matches up with what people with disability and their families say. It's what they've said in lots of previous consultations, and it's also what they said in the groups that we ran as part of this process, that it is really, really hard juggling lots of different appointments in lots of different places when everybody isn't on the same page. So Kelly just reflected on how hard it was for her when she was a parent that had younger kids, and in the groups I also thought about remembered what it felt like for me when my kids were young, and I was trying to juggle different appointments with my daughter who's got an intellectual disability. And I just remember how it felt when you were trying to run from one appointment to another. You were trying to keep the other kids kind of entertained while my daughter was in an appointment, or you were always trying to work out how you were going to clone yourself so you could be in two places kind of at once. And it was super stressful. And the feeling that I always kind of remembered that was like, oh, I feel like I'm failing and not kind of doing a good job. So having everybody in the one spot, I think might kind of help with this. The other reason that I think it might be helpful is something that I can see going on in the chat, which is it makes sense for everybody who's working with the child and working in the family to all be on the same page about what is important. I remember what it felt like when one lot of people told you to do one thing and then another lot of people kind of told you to do something kind of else. So the idea behind the hub and what people told us is they thought it might make it easier for everybody to get on the same page and all kind of head in the same direction and focus on the same things. So that is another reason why people liked kind of this hub idea. And the other thing that people told us in the groups was they thought it might be helpful to make sure that families got the support they need. Families told us really strongly that they don't always feel well supported, and sometimes they feel like the professionals that they work with didn't listen to what they said about what they thought would work best for their child, and they didn't also listen to what they thought would work best for the family. So people said they liked the idea of a hub because they thought it might help address that.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. That was really insightful. So we're now going to go to a few questions from the audience. So the first question is from Lindsay and Di, and Kelly, we'll go to you. So would this hub be for all children, not just children with disabilities?
Yeah, look, I would see this hub as for everybody for a start. I mean, when we're talking kids, a lot of kids aren't diagnosed or accessing services either. So there is that aspect of it, but all families need support. And so this is about all families coming together and being supported in the way that works best for them and their kids.
And if I could add to that, that one, I'd say that's one of the advantages we think of maybe having everything kind of in one spot, is that so you don't have to go away and get a referral, which is, you know, a letter from someone to say that you can use this service, or that you have to get a diagnosis, a proper label before. If it was all in the hub, maybe those things wouldn't matter kind of so much, and people would be able to kind of come together and kind of get support. So it was one of the things when we talked it out with people we thought was probably a pretty good advantage of it having everything in the one spot.
Amazing. Thank you both. We have Sarah, who has asked, how will people with intellectual disabilities not eligible for the NDIS be able to access services that align to their needs with people who can communicate at the same level and receive the same type of services that is funded under the NDIS without falling through the cracks and gaps? Kirsten, I might go to you for this one.
Cool. Thanks for the question, Sarah. I think I will say two things. The first is that in all of the groups that we ran and all of the online sessions that we ran, in this one, we just focused on what children and family needed. So it wasn't about adults. It was just about kids. But it was about kids with no diagnosis, any diagnosis. So we didn't say that we were only going to focus on kids that had an intellectual disability or kids who had a diagnosis of autism or who were deaf-blind. We said we wanted to talk about the needs of all kids who had a disability. So I think that's the most important thing, Sarah, is that for this one, we just did a deep dive. We dove really deep into what kids and families kind of needed. So it wasn't so much about adults. We hope that in the future we will run some other work where we'll talk about what adults with disability who are not eligible for the NDIS, what they might need and what that support might look like. And we might run some stuff about that kind of in the future. So Sarah, I know you'd like to be involved in that, so keep an eye out for that. But for this one, we just focused on kids.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. So we have a question here from Mary, and Kelly, I think we'll go to you for this one. So would these hubs be state or federally funded, or would there be another mechanism in place? And what would the referral process and intake process look like?
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Mary. Really, really big and important questions. So again, these are the ideas that we're coming up with. The actual how it's funded, and we were looking at supports that were funded outside of the NDIS. So whether that falls under the state model or a separate federal or another model completely, that's the stuff that needs to be sorted out. And again, the referral process. So I want to make this sort of explain this was about people coming together and going, all right, what's going to work for us? So the nitty gritty things like what is an actual referral process into a certain part of the hub, we didn't delve down into that. There are all those things that need to be worked out. But what I also really like is this idea of a hub is that whatever that referral process is going to be a lot easier for people to be able to navigate.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kelly. So we've had a couple of comments in the chat, like this one from Sue. Sue said that the idea sounds great, but she can't get her child's teacher to speak to his speech therapist. Kirsten, do you think the hub would help with these kind of communication challenges?
I hope that it would. And Sue, I just want to say I hear you and see you, because that was my experience when my kids were in school. So I really sympathise. And it's probably why I think maybe the hub would work with that, because it would mean that the teachers in the school that were in the hub would be connected to one set, like one group of therapists, rather than what kind of happens at the moment, which is a teacher might have a few kids in the class who have a speech therapist, and they have to deal with lots of different ones. And maybe this way they'd only have to deal with a smaller number. I won't say one, but like a smaller number. And hopefully having a longer term relationship, not just for that year when you've got that kid in a class, and hopefully if they were co-located, the teachers and the therapists would get used to each other because they'd been kind of, working together for a while, and hopefully that might address some of the communication challenges, and they could kind of set up with a kind of a better working relationship. People are people, right? So I don't reckon it would work perfectly kind of all of the time. But I think if you had to work in a long-term way instead of just for a shorter period of time, you might be able to iron out some of those challenges, and it might be easier to get everybody on the same page.
Thank you so much for that, Kirsten. So I'm going to jump to the next question. Jax said that they're concerned that this wouldn't work for their child because it would be really distracting to be getting their therapy or OT supports in the classroom. Kirsten, could we go to you for this? Do you think that this is a concern, and how would this be addressed?
Yeah, I think that's right, Jax. One of the things that I would hope that if therapists had better relationships with teachers, I hope two things might sort of happen. Is that that together they could come up with a plan that would work well for that child, not a cookie cutter, we've got to do it this way all of the time, but if it would work better for that particular child in that particular classroom. So if having somebody come into the classroom wouldn't work for your child, then the therapist and the teacher could come up with a plan of a different way to kind of do it. So hopefully if they had a good relationship and good communication, they could come up with a way that would work for the individual child. And then the second thing is the other opportunity I think there is less about the therapist coming into the classroom to do things with the child, but teaching the teacher and the other people who are in the classroom how to do the things so that they are doing it in the classroom as a matter of kind of course. So I'll use a really kind of basic example, which is, and it was an issue in our house, learning how to hold the pen, right? And so I think if the therapist was focused on helping the teacher go, this is the best way for this child to kind of hold the pen and make it easier for them to write. And then the teacher was reinforcing that in the classroom. And then when you come home, you know, mum and dad and brother and sister are also kind of focused on that. And then there might be a separate session where the therapist did it. It means that everybody is focused on teaching the child the same way, instead of people all teaching different ways and it just being really kind of confusing for the kid. But it wouldn't mean that the therapist had to come in and kind of be sitting there next to the child going, hold it this way. Once the teacher knew how to do it, the teacher could keep an eye on it. Or if there was an aide in the classroom, the aide could keep kind of an eye on it. So it is less about having people, well, it might be having people come into the classroom, but it could be more, and I think it works better if you teach all of the other people how to do it, and then they just build it into the kind of regular kind of what's going on in the kind of classroom. I think this is one of the advantages of the hub, is making sure that everybody's on the same page, teaching the same things, reinforcing the same things, but not having to drag people around from kind of different appointments. It's one advantage, and one thing we would need to think more about and kind of how to work. But I think that could be one advantage.
Thank you, Kirsten. I think that was a really clear way to explain it, so thank you for that. My question is for you, Kelly. Robin has asked, is this plan national or Victoria only?
So all the discussions that we're having are looking at how this would work across so-called Australia, across the whole country. So just to really quickly answer that question, we're not state-based. We are absolutely looking at national and how it works, how things like this would work in what I was saying before, in, you know, urban, regional, and potentially remote communities as well.
Thank you so much for that, Kelly. So we've got a question from Luke next. He asked, is there an age that children would be allowed to join in? Kelly, could we go to you for this question?
That's a really interesting question, and I don't think it was something that came up, Kirsten, unless you heard it come up specifically. I know we were talking to people who had kids of a range of ages as well. So I don't think so. I don't think that was looked at. It was could work for almost any.
Yeah, Kirsten speaking. Yeah, we didn't specifically asked about ages. We just put a limit on it, which is kind of once kids left school, that was kind of the age. One of the things, and it is different in every state, but one of the things that could be in a hub, for those of you who are in Victoria, you might be familiar with maternal and child health nurses, which are the places that you go to when you have a baby, and they provide you with some support and some help, and they do what are called developmental checks, which is to see if your bubby's kind of meeting kind of different milestones. Depending on the state, and they'll obviously have to look a bit different kind of in every state, you might put a maternal and child health nurse in that hub, because that's where parents who've had a new bubby are already kind of going, and that would make it easier for them to connect up with kind of other services. So I don't think we really thought about age, but it might be one of those things, to Kelly's point about they might look different in different states. It might depend what kind of services are available in those states.
Thank you for that. Kirsten, you had already kind of touched on this in a previous answer, but we're just wondering what kind of supports would be available for parents in this hub.
Yeah, I think I think obviously kind of information would be available and help to connect to different services. So that's usually called navigation, but it's really just a really fancy way of saying they help you find different services that will be useful, work out the ones that are going to be kind of useful to you and connect them to you. So that is just a navigation is just a fancy way of saying kind of all of that. I also think it would be a good opportunity for kind of peer support groups that you could, both for kids but also for parents. And people usually focus on mums, but like you had the opportunity to also focus for all parents, so for dads kind of as well. Other things that they could, there are some general kind of courses and supports that could be available to help people learn new things. So I think there could be a range of things, but I reckon both formal peer support, like joining a peer support group. I'm still in the same peer support group that I joined when my daughter was a bubby. I still meet with those families that we joined all those years ago. But also, I think what Kelly said was really important. Sometimes incidental contact where you just bump into people and you're waiting around and you have a bit of a chat and you end up finding out that you got things in common. There's that kind of peer support as well. There is the formal stuff, but there is the informal stuff that helps people feel connected that I think is just as important.
Thank you so much for that, Kirsten. So our next question, I will say we've had a lot of really fantastic questions. Thank you so much, everyone. Our next question is from Sarah M. She asked, how will this inform the ongoing Thriving Kids programs already starting in some states and territories? Kirsten, could we jump to you for this one?
Yeah, good. It's a really good question. Some states and territories have already decided about some things that are going to be in Thriving Kids. And we know this because they've already put out some information about services they're looking to kind of buy. Other states haven't done that kind of yet. So we think there's a really important chance right at the moment to develop this idea and throw it into the mix while the states and territories and the Commonwealth are thinking about what Thriving Kids could look at. So that's why we decided to do this, is that we want to take these ideas and throw them kind of into the mix of thinking about Thriving Kids. But also Thriving Kids will roll out over a longer period of time. And so even though a couple of states have made some decisions about some services, doesn't mean there isn't a chance to influence them about what they might kind of do in the future. And then the second thing is, if there's interest in this model, it might not just be for younger kids. Maybe there's a version of this that could work in high schools for kind of older kids, and particularly preparing to kind of leave school. And so, yes, while some states have made some decisions about some things, not everything is nailed down yet when it comes, or as far as we know, as far as the information that is publicly available about Thriving Kids, not everything's nailed down. So we want to kind of put these ideas into the mix when governments are thinking about how to support kids and families outside the NDIS.
Thank you. We've had a question from Maddie, which is, how would hubs like this interact with external education services, private versus state schools? Kelly, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And from my understanding, the conversations were predominantly around state or public schools and public kindies, because that's what most of the people that we spoke to accessed. However, I think we need to also talk about how this could work by having like the ARCHOs or the ACOs, so the Aboriginal Community Controlled Orgs, alongside with a library, with potentially some sport and rec stuff, like that it would still be accessible to anybody who did attend any other school or were homeschooled. It still creates that community space.
And I would add to that, like, because if it was, the hubs would obviously be located in a particular area, and so you could sort of think about what other private schools are kind of in that area, and then kind of, connect them in. The complicating factor is going to be how those things are all funded. So I would put that in the bucket of one of those things that's got to be worked. If people like this idea, one of those things that would have to be kind of worked out, because it's important to say that this wouldn't replace the things that schools are supposed to do, and this includes private schools, to make their schools accessible and inclusive for all kids with disability. That is still the responsibility kind of the school, whether they're a private school or a state school. This wouldn't replace in any way their responsibility to make the school inclusive and accessible for all the children who are attending it. And we will make that point very clearly when we write the final report.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So the next question here is from Shah. Shah said, my one question mark would be around those who are immunocompromised, needing to go into a communal situation to be a part of it. Is there a smart and inclusive way of creating such a hub that enables safe inclusion so that children and their families do not feel like they need to self-exclude and therefore miss out on the support? Kirsten or Kelly, do you have thoughts on this? Kirsten, perhaps we'll start with you and then go to Kelly.
I think Kelly's got an awesome answer
Okay.
on this one. But I think that is one of I would put that in the bucket of things that we would have to think more about if this idea gets taken up, about how we do it. Because I really hear that about people not being able to take part in kind of big group or anything that is shared space or communal space. I really hear that. And it might be because you're immunocompromised. Another reason might be it's too overwhelming kind of and too noisy and doesn't work kind of for you. So it'd be one of those things that we'd have to kind of, work out. I reckon there's a path through. I just reckon we've got to work it out.
Sorry, that is pretty much what I was going to say. I think there's there is still some stuff to really work. There's a lot of stuff around this to work out, and to make something as inclusive for absolutely everyone, it does need those discussions on how that's going to work. So, yeah, definitely keen to keep talking about that.
We had a question in the chat from Gay, which was there could be a commercial building as part of the hub that was rented or leased out to allied health services so they're still on the site. This would then assist with funding and upkeep. Kelly, what do you think about this?
I think that's a really innovative idea. I think, again, they're the types of things that we've got to go and work through. All right, what are the barriers to this? There are instances where it might not work the best we want it to. There's a whole heap of considerations, but then we also have ideas like this, and thank you so much, where it's like, actually, how can we make this work? How would that go? So yeah, definitely a great idea.
Could I add, in the area that I live, the local council built their council offices and the library that was attached to the kind of, and it was just near the kind of primary school, so it ended up kind of working like a bit of a hub. But they put a cafe in, and they did that on purpose because it gave people a chance to meet and kind of have a cup of coffee outside of the library, so they stopped talking and making noise in the library, but they had somewhere else to eat. So they're like, there might be other things that might kind of work too.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We've got a question from Lindsay. We'll go to you for this one, Kirsten. So how do we embed living experience into training for healthcare professionals and teachers, and for the whole of government too, while we're at it?
Oh my God, Lindsay, I love your ambition. I think that is so true. So I think that is a very big question, and probably kind of too big for the kind of 5 minutes that we've kind of got a lot. But I'll say one thing from my own experience. So you'll remember right at the beginning of the conversation, it was said that I work at the Melbourne Disability Institute, which is at the University of Melbourne. And so at the University of Melbourne, they're obviously training lots of folks for future jobs, doctors, allied health workers, lots of different people. And I would say it's still got a way to go, but those courses are now trying to bring in people with lived experience into those courses to help with the training. So I would say from my perspective, we've got a long way to go, but we're much further along than we used to be in recognising the importance of lived experience in training those baby doctors, as I call them, so that they understand the kind of the full diversity of people that they're going to be working with when they have those jobs. I couldn't agree with you more that hearing from people with lived experience is one of the things that really makes a difference. Down Syndrome Australia has this awesome program called the Health Ambassadors, and they are a bunch of people with Down syndrome who go out and give talks to doctors, nurses, allied health professionals, all kinds of people, dentists, all kinds of people, about how they want to be treated when they come in as a patient. And you should hear what people say when they attend these training sessions. So I'm with you, Lindsay. We're on the path. We've just got to keep going.
Thank you for that. We do have one final question, which is also from Lindsay. And we'll probably get Kelly to answer this one. So this is, who is the final report going to? And then Sue has also asked if everyone here today can see the final report when it is completed.
Yeah, absolutely. So the final report, like, we're pulling this all together, including what you've said today, with the ideas. We will be what we call a launch. So that is in November. We'll have another open dialogue where we've pulled everything together about this, keeping in mind that we won't have, I think some of the questions we might not have the answers to yet. And I know there were some really specific ones about both the app and the hub that would need to be worked out as we're going. But the ideas and the considerations we will launch is what we're calling it in an open dialogue like this. We'll also have a report that will be publicly available. Kirsten, please jump in if I've gotten that completely wrong, but that is no, thank you. Sometimes I doubt myself when I'm speaking in front of a lot of people. That will be publicly available. We'll also be talking about who do we specifically send that to, and that could be federal governments, it could be state governments, it could be local councils, it could be a whole range of places that we go, this is an idea that you need to jump on board, or these are all ideas that you need to jump on board with.
And I would add to that, we're going to always keep, there are lots of different consultations and things going on at the moment. Once the report is finished, we will look for opportunities to kind of put the report into those consultations, so it is. But also the organisations that sit behind the dialogue are also thinking about how they can put it into their work and keep pushing the ideas out that way.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kirsten and Kelly. We managed to get through a lot of questions in the chat today, which is awesome. But I'm sorry if we didn't get to yours. We did do our best, but we are running out of time. Thank you so much to you and to everyone for joining us today, including all of our incredible speakers.
A final reminder that we'll be sending all of you a survey after this event. which will ask you to share your thoughts on the idea we talked about today. We'll also include a link in the chat in a moment. The survey will include the videos and the slides about each idea to help refresh your memory. There will also be an easy read version of the survey. So please do complete the survey because we really want to know what you think. Your ideas will help us write the final report, which will then launch at the feature dialogue later this year.
Before we go, I wanted to tell you about next month's Open Dialogue event, which is called What Makes a Community Inclusive? It's happening in just 2 weeks, so make sure you register now. The link is in the chat. Thank you so much to everyone for being part of today's event. We really hope to see you for the next one.